Mahindra, leading digital transformation and global delivery for enterprises worldwide, and Kaan Terzioğlu, who is the CEO of VEON Group, bringing in a unique perspective from operating in multiple regulatory, political, and social environments. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me here. Let's begin, Mohit, with you talking about the centrality of business success in today's global economy. Is trust that central determinant?
No, absolutely. Look, I feel that anytime you're running a global business, anytime you're running a multi-product business, customers and societies and employees and governments need to trust that you will be predictable, but equally that you will display a high degree of integrity, right? And the reality is that people want to do business with organizations that they trust. We have seen this in many, many studies across the world, that in societies which are high trust societies, the eventual outcomes for every organization are great, right? And trust obviously has many attributes. Predictability is one, like I said, integrity is the other. Systems, governance, guardrails, checks and balances sort of round out all the things that you need. And it is something which is earned over a long period of time, but unfortunately can be lost rather quickly.
Okay. Kaan, we were discussing a little earlier on what governments and private sectors can do. Talk us through what are the tangibles on how governments are working with companies.
Geeta, thank you very much for having me here. I think you have a very provocative title, What Governments Should Do. I have seen in my career governments really focused on policy setting, and some other governments getting excited about procurement of technologies and systems. I prefer the first one. I think policies, especially, of course, there could be wrong ones, right ones, but the right policies are the ones which enables private sector and the economy to develop. I'll give you a very tangible example. About 2 months ago, I was in Chengdu, and I noticed that the next 5-year development plan of China, from 26 to 30 practically, had addressed the issue of utilities available for households. And it defines 3 utilities: water, electricity, and AI. Now, how to execute this? Government can set the policy, but if you look to the execution of this, and I had the chance to visit a municipal level data inference center, a 15 megawatt AI processing center in one of the municipalities of Chengdu, serving about 1 million people. And what I have seen, with the right partnership of the private sector, in that case, my colleagues in China Mobile did a good job. They have developed this capacity there, and hospitals, schools, and households were connected to this data inference center. The MRIs, X-rays, ultrasounds done in the hospitals were diagnosed by AI-based doctors at a fraction of a cost, 30% more accuracy. And think about this, a policy, a clarity on what needs to be done, and execution by the private sector, and getting it done at a scale where the execution model can be scalable from municipality to municipality. Local governments, a big telco company, a technology company that can deliver that basically seamlessly. I think it's really important that governments needs to focus on this type of policy level, not to become an encumbrance to the private sector, but opening the path.
But where's the thin line of ensuring data, big data, and then being intrusive? Because this data collection also means breach of privacy.
Yes, you can look at it from different angles, but when you define a utility for the good of citizens, millions, 10 millions, 100 millions, billions of people, and when you then do the right partnership in terms of a trusted brand that has been there providing them a service for maybe 100 years, I think this is a good balance in terms of managing privacy and also sustainable public service. We have to keep in mind, many people are very open in sharing their data openly with Instagrams and TikToks, but when it comes to your hospital and the school, I think we should have a different mindset on that. I think trust, as you have asked, is very key.
Mohit, Mahindra is spread across the globe. When you're interacting with governments and how governments deal with people, where and how did trust become so fragile in the last decade?
So look, before I answer that, I actually had a point of view on the data piece as well.
Go ahead.
Which is basically, you can have three models, right? You can have a model where private companies hold your data, like a Facebook or like a TikTok. You can have a model where governments hold your data. Or you can have a model where the individual has ownership of the data, which I think is the point Kaan was making as well, that I have my health records, they're available to me, and I can choose to share them with you on occasion, but then be able to withdraw it back once our transaction is complete. So I feel that defining an optimal model where an individual has the available infrastructure to be able to store data and then transactionally share it with counterparties is probably the most effective. Coming back to your point at Mahindra, look, the group has a presence in over 100 countries across the world. At Tech Mahindra itself, we're in 90 countries across the world. And I feel that the trust issue comes back to first, are you seen as a credible player that is able to keep long-term promises, right? Because people have very long-term memories, whether it is governments or it's employees or it's your customers. So making sure that you are seen as a credible long-term player. I feel the second part about the trust is very important because things will go wrong. Things will go wrong. We may have made commitments to a state, for instance, to do a certain level of hiring. Because of the economic downturn, we may not be able to meet that particular commitment, or we may want to delay it, right? I think what is really important at this time is the ability to transparently share what happened, right? And I always believe that in any large company, there will always be mistakes that will be made. How you deal with them, right? Are your customers, are the governments assured that there is a governance mechanism, there are guardrails, that there is transparency? The cover-up is always worse than the crime. So from a Mahindra perspective, the fact that we have a large presence, everywhere from the US through to China, is a reflection of our ability to be seen as a credible counterparty, whether it's by the state of Michigan, where we build, recreational vehicles, or the state of Dallas, where we do a significant amount of work with the private sector players, or in China. I feel it is that established credibility through track record, comfort that there is robust governance in place, that there are guardrails in place, and finally a track record that when things have gone wrong, we have fixed them and been very transparent about it.
Okay, but it does not spread across. You're from a sector where the entire corporate sector is not or does not think the same way. There are only a few who are thinking like this, who take corporate responsibility very seriously. And that's where the distrust and mistrust really comes from. How does one then align people's trust with government policies?
I feel, look, at the end of the day, what really matters is the duration that you take to a partnership or the duration you take to a transaction. If you're trying to make money in the very short run, there's always the risk that you will make mistakes, right? And we've seen this in the global financial crisis, where people were trying to maximize their results for the year. But whenever you think in terms of long-term businesses, and at the end of the day, we are all stewards of the business, we'll be gone. These are all shareholder-owned companies, and there'll be a fresh, management team in the future. As long as we're thinking of this business as a long-term enterprise, and as long as the incentives, the rewards, the recognition, the policies are associated with that, it should be fine. There is actually a quote by one of the erstwhile CEOs of Goldman Sachs, which I always think is very, very apt. He says, in every transaction, you should try and be long-term greedy. Don't try, at the end of the day, we're businesses. We are looking to do profitable transactions. We are looking to, make money when we do business. But we are always long-term greedy. You're not looking to make money of every transaction. You're not being very short-term oriented in your thinking. Because whenever that has been the case, when you start thinking of clients as counterparties, when you start thinking of somebody else's profit as or somebody else's revenue as your profit, it always leads to to mistakes. And like everything else, the tone from the top is very important, right? We've been fortunate to have sort of our majority shareholder or a significant shareholder always take a long-term perspective on these things, and to have that tone which then percolates down the organization, percolates down the group.
Okay, Kaan, building systems, buying products, how do the two meet? Because there are examples of how you and have helped build systems in parts of the world where there's emergency, there's conflict. Tell us about that.
So we operate in countries, in frontier markets like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Ukraine. And over the years, we have been blessed with man-made and natural disasters. And when you are exposed to these type of situations...
I'm going to ignore that.
you need to have an answer, and you need to have a very strong trust and partnership with the governments. And the best available technologies needs to be used for the people who need the most at the right time. Let me give you another example. Take a country like Ukraine, which has been under war and for 4 years now, very difficult conditions to operate a network. And 30% of the land is mined, so with land mines, it's difficult to maintain. There are destruction at different levels of energy sources, so there's rarely, maybe 6 hours a day, there is electricity to operate the network. How do you address the issue of connecting people on a ubiquitous basis? So that's why we actually developed, with the partnership of the ICT Ministry, a partnership with Starlink. Got the approvals from multi-governments, from FCC to, of course, local regulations. And we decided to do something which was actually extremely controversial to the industry, because we developed a partnership where we integrated our terrestrial network with the satellite platform. Irregardless of there is electricity or not, irregardless of the terrestrial networks are properly maintained or not, today in Ukraine, every single person with a 4G enabled phone can directly connect to a satellite without any equipment needed, and can get a signal and can communicate. Now, many parties in our industry thinks that satellites, Starlink is potentially a competition. But when it is needed, it's an essential service. And with the right government policy and with the, I think, right execution, it can really open up big opportunities and build again the trust with the consumers. Ukraine is not the only example. Kazakhstan is doing the same thing. If you look to Kazakhstan, the mass of Kazakhstan is bigger than entire Europe. Only 20 million people live in that area. How do you provide a ubiquitous connectivity? The only way is through satellite integration with the terrestrial. And I think this type of thinking and policy level, ambitions of the governments are really key for bringing essential services to the people with a little bit of effort and execution capacity.
Well, Mohit, would you agree that digital transformation, data platforms, and global delivery systems can influence trust?
Oh, for sure. I feel that the essential architecture for how you provide citizen services, how you provide commercial services is very important. And this is where I feel that, having the individual be the, I agree with Kaan that, government should not get into the business of maybe directly providing services, except where there is an absence of an alternative, where there are some services where the private sector is not incented to act, like maybe in very low density population areas. Government should provide a clear sense of frameworks, and it should allow for the maximum individual agency, right? Like we were saying, for health records, I should be able to freely share my health record with, with a provider, with an insurance company. But equally, at the end of the transaction, have the faith and the digital architecture that it would actually be removed from the systems and then come back to me, right? So I think that initial provisioning of digital services, the thought process around that is extremely important. And now we have technology that allows for individual transactions to be seamlessly done across millions and billions of people at scale, right? So that architecture is very possible now. I do feel that that will really grow trust in the system, right? At the end of the day, if you have the ability to seamlessly transact, and you are quite comfortable that your data is not being used, or governments and companies do not have access to the data, I feel that will be what will allow for maybe more payments, more medical records being shared, more property transactions being executed, more financial transactions being executed, because that combination of privacy as well as ubiquity is very important.
Okay, the theme this year at the World Government Summit has been a lot to do with AI and digital transformation. So this question is to both of you. Is AI, digital transformation, automation, all this reshaping transparency and accountability? Kaan, to you first. Is it reshaping transparency, or is it going to mold how people think?
I think the ultimate objective, of course, every government should be a better life for all, and to eradicate poverty in the countries mostly we operate in, and maybe in some other Western countries, it's about access to AI, making people having the services at higher levels. But if you think about all these, betterment of the lives of people, one of the important things is really about inclusivity. Whether it is financial inclusion or it is inclusion and accessibility of AI services in the local languages with the local values of the people will be critical. And again, I see that the level of enlightenment in this area is increasing. Sovereign AI has become an agenda item in all the policies of the governments, and we are actually working hand in hand, identifying, fast-tracking local language models from Urdu to Punjabi to Bengali to Uzbek, Kazakh, Ukrainian, and develop these tools as fast as possible. And especially in AI, it's important to make these applicable to specific use cases. I think there is nothing artificial in AI. This is about augmenting competencies, skills, capabilities, and creating capacity. And we need to make sure that AI is used in such a way that the best doctor can be in Dhaka, best teacher can be in Islamabad, best farmer can be somewhere in Kazakhstan. And to make that happen, again, it requires a public-private joint effort, a clear and directed policy from the governments and capable private companies who can execute on that.
Mohit?
No, I agree with almost everything Kaan has said. I'll just make two quick points. The first is really around the provision of citizen services in local language, right? I think that is an extremely important and largely ignored area, because most of the LLMs are really only in English, or maybe they're in Arabic, and maybe they're in Chinese. But the world has, thousands of dialects, thousands of individual languages. And so one of the things that we've been focused on as well is creating large language models in local languages, right? So for instance, we created a large language model in Hindi called Indus that covers about 27 dialects in Hindi. We built a large language model in Bahasa Indonesian, and these will allow for provision of citizen services. We're now working with the Government of India as part of the National AI Mission to build a much larger large language model, many billions of parameters in the model. And the first use case that we're building is really to allow for students between grade 6 and grade 12 to answer and to be educated in physics in their own language, right? It's potentially could be transformational as you look at a new generation of science whiz kids growing up. I think that's a very powerful capability that we are creating. The second point I wanted to make is it is important to stress the scale of ambition in AI. At times I'm a bit concerned that a lot of what is coming out in terms of the ambition for AI is really about productivity only, right? And productivity is fine, productivity is very important. But if your total ambition for AI is to be able to, get rid of a few contact center jobs or to improve developer productivity, people are really missing the picture. The objective of AI, for instance, should be how can we provide everybody a truly world-class healthcare service for $10 a month, right? That should be the scale of the ambition, rather than only in terms of productivity. And I feel that if that aspiration is not spelled out in those terms, we will have the 90% of people whose lives are at risk or whose livelihoods are at risk out to destroy this movement, right? We have to be thinking about how this will transform societies for the better, and with real use cases of transformational possibilities of AI, rather than purely job reduction.
I know we're completely running out of time, but Mohit, because you come from India and you work in the global south, it's very important because not everyone in the global south has access to AI. Will they miss the bus?
Well, that is a very real risk, right? That is a real risk that we saw with, with digital technologies earlier and with mobile phones. But I'm happy to say that the sort of the cycle of adoption is speeding up very dramatically, right? So while it took maybe, 30 years for mass media in the form of television to come to India after it was in the West, it only took about 10 years for mobile phones to come to India. It took only about 3 or 4 years for instantaneous mass payment systems to come into India or to digital identity come to India. And with these new models coming in and with the infrastructure the government is creating, I feel that cycles are getting shorter and shorter. So I feel that is still a risk, but signs look a lot better than they did earlier.
Very briefly, Kaan.
Geeta, if you have read *Sapiens*, Harari's book, he talks about how Homo sapiens differentiated themselves with Neanderthals. And the ability of Homo sapiens to tell a story, to gossip, to lie, made them unique in their capabilities to develop a society and community. I believe over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see more and more, not only access to an AI tool, but also data to organic transmission, which will allow us to keep more data in our memories, make faster decisions with processing capabilities over a cloud. And I believe we are at the verge of differentiating a new kind of society. And I think, yes, if communities do not adapt, they will fail.
Mohit Joshi, Kaan Terzioğlu, thank you so much for joining us in this brilliant conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Geeta. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mohit.